We are so pleased to welcome Tom Toro for his new collection and to think we started as a book club. Tom is a cartoonist and award-winning children's book author who has published over 200 cartoons in the New Yorker since 2010. This is his debut cartoon collection. Then we have Michael Maslin, who happens to be my father. Began contributing to the New Yorker in 1977. In 2009, he created Inkspill, a website devoted to the New Yorker cartoonist, news, and history. He is the essayist for At Wit's End, published last year, which is a collection of photographs and essays featuring New Yorker cartoonists, past and present, which is for sale over there. We do have both authors' books for sale. They'll sign them for you. If you'd like, please join me in welcoming Tom and Michael.
Hi, everybody. I'm just going to move this a little bit.
Do you want me to put on the floor?
Yeah, because I feel like... Welcome, Tom, back to Rhinebeck. Do we have to speak up? No, we're okay. Good.
Thank you for having me. Good to see you again. Thanks for buying dinner.
You're welcome, Tom. Always.
Michael's very generous. Get him to invite you to dinner. He's very generous.
No, don't do that. Don't do that. We're cartoonists after all. It's great in this 100th year of the New Yorker. 100 years is amazing. And it's really nice, and Tom knows this, we've talked a bit about things. And not too long ago, publishers would not publish. A long time ago, they would publish books like this, and then they stopped, and they would publish books. As I said to Tom, it would have been the Tom Toro Book of Cats or the Tom Toro Book of, I don't know, enchiladas or something. I don't know. But this is a true collection, and it's a variety. It's a nice, what Tom's been up to for 15 years now at the New Yorker. And
they made it easy for us because that's 15% of the New Yorker's lifespan.
How nice.
That's very easy, yeah.
I'm not a math guy, so don't do that again. I don't know what you're talking about. But it's a beautiful book, and it's very funny. So we're going to talk about, let's start with this. I do have a bunch of questions, don't look at them. And what does the number 610 mean to you?
The number 610, that is the cartoon that they finally bought from me back in 2010. I had submitted, I don't know why I was motivated to do this, probably just some form of perversion, but when they finally bought my first cartoon, I went back and counted each submission I'd made up until that point, starting in late 2007 up to January 2010 when they bought my first one, and it was the 610th cartoon that they finally bought from me. I like to say that like the ones that preceded that 610th are not all undiscovered masterpieces. Like I was very much learning the craft as I was submitting. I went back and looked at some of the early stuff. It's very much bad Far Side cartoons. You know, I was really sort of mimicking my influences very self-consciously. And I was submitting by mail. You know, I was living in California in my parents' house, and I was sending in the weekly packets by mail, getting them back by mail with I'm sure you have your own collection of little index cards.
Absolutely. With
Eustace Tilley, and it says, "Thank you for your submission. We don't have any need for these at present," right. Or however they elegantly dismiss you. But then at a certain point, I knew that I was sort of treading water a little bit. So I went and met with Bob Mankoff, who was the editor at the time, in person. Went to New York with the intention of sitting down with him because they still had open office hours on Tuesdays. You could go in, take your batch of cartoons, even if you had not sold, and sort of mill around and, you know, sort of like admire George Booth over in the corner and be too scared to talk to him. And then you go into the office, and Bob looked at my batch, didn't take any of them, and then we just talked for about 10 minutes about his theory of cartooning, which I then later saw a interview that he did and realized he was rehearsing his interview with me. But he did give me some valuable advice, which was my style was not going to work for them. He said the way that I was doing it. I was clever, I was coming up with some good jokes, but my style was not working for them. So because it was just mimicking my idols, Gary Larson in particular. And so after that, I changed course very deliberately. And I stopped trying to like over-engineer the cartoons. And I like to say that I started then just observing things and trying to transmit my observations through my own sense of style. And then from that point, it took about another year for me to cultivate the work enough where the voice matched the drawing and there was an actual sense of humor there. That you're trying to do two things. You're trying to make jokes that are unique yet suitable, right? The New Yorker
Right.
is a special genre in and of itself, so
Right.
it takes a while to navigate those two eyes of the needle.
Or you make them realize that they want your genre.
Yeah, you wear them down.
You wear them down. That's what you do. You wear them down.
So that's 610.
Yeah, and the thought came to mind, 610, did you have a number in mind you might go to? Like, where
Was 611 my limit?
Yeah.
Would I have quit that next
Right.
week? I think I kept going, partially out of stubbornness. I had set myself the goal of breaking into the New Yorker. I was desperate for a career path to get out of my parents' house, essentially. I was part of the boomerang generation. This was during the Great Recession. And funnily enough, when my first cartoon was published, it appeared in a magazine that had the cover by Dan Clowes on it, where there's a young man who is hanging his PhD diploma on his childhood bedroom. So he's like, come back home. So it's kind of uncanny that was published with my first one. But it was also, I knew that I had something that I hadn't yet discovered. I was not happy with what I was creating yet. And so I felt like I had an aptitude in it. It was something I was passionate about, and I was not satisfied yet with what I was making. So I think that was part of the motivating factor
And
as
that,
well.
all that time, I've always thought, we do know people, Bob Eckstein, who will be here next week, and Roz Chess, both sold the very first time they went to the New Yorker, which is a killer for people that, and then we know someone named David Cypress, who submitted for about 22 years before he sold his. And I
I
said,
usually get a gasp when I say 610, and I'm knowing that there are other people for whom that number
poor
is
David
much larger.
Cypress, yeah. He told me that, I said, so David, what was that like when you got the okay? And he said, I just started crying. And I understand why, that's a long time. But I
For
always
those
thought-
who don't know, like when you actually sell a cartoon, it's called getting an okay because it actually just says okay. Like you get an email back from them and it says okay.
And we don't know where, I tried to find out where that came from and no one knows. No one knows. Went to the old timers or some.
Because they used to draw it on the sketch, right? They would
Yeah.
on the back of the sketch it would say okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
The old timers don't know, and if they don't know, no one knows.
Lost in the mist.
Yeah. We all do start, and this actually fits in with what you're talking about. I think it's a learning, it's an apprentice thing that you're doing when the 609 where you're learning, and you're still learning, I'm still learning, I'm sure.
I hope, yeah.
I know we're both still learning. But can you point to one, I know you told me that Charles Adams was an idol, and you can sort of see that in your work a bit here and there.
Mhm.
It's good that we don't see it too much, right? As we talked about, you don't want to see a copy. You want to see your own voice. Anybody besides Adams who like really got to you I'll use the word inspire. I was trying to avoid it, but inspired you graphically or otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, the Adams influence for me, just I love the harmony of the beauty and the morbidity that he was able to achieve. You know, there's Bob Mankoff, the editor who I broke in under, and I think we both kind of all a friend at this point in our lives. He has this great metaphor for like what the tone that a cartoon needs to achieve, and he uses the metaphor of a zoo. I don't know if you saw his TED Talk. He says, this is a good zoo, and there's cage bars and a tiger on the other side. This is a bad zoo, just cage bars, no tiger. This is a worse zoo, the tiger on your side of the cage bars. So it's like, where is that level of transgression? There's a little bit of iconoclasm and a little bit of danger, like in cartoons, to make them exciting. And no one found that line better than Charles Adams. I think he even maybe transgressed it a few times. He really sort of he kept pushing that. And so, but that combined with just the beauty of his cartoons, you know, really, you get the joke, and that yet then you can sit there and sink into them because you really want to just like inhabit this lush world that he's created.
Well, let me say, that goes right into looking at your work. It's not 1,000% the same, and that's good. Right? We don't want to ever be all the same all the time. But I see some Charles Adams in your care. When I look at Adams drawings, which I do a lot, I look at them for inspiration and just because I love them.
Do you have any originals?
I have one in a book, a little match girl he drew,
Oh, okay.
he drew for me, which was nice.
That's cool.
Yeah. But when I look at your work, I see that you take a lot of care. If you look, I feel like I'm not a salesman, believe me, I'm a cartoonist. But if you look through these, you'll see that Tom takes a lot more care in his backgrounds than a lot of cartoonists do. And I'm not criticizing them. Everybody is different, and they all have their own way. But the amount of care you take sometimes, they're almost like separate drawings. They're almost like you could remove the front part where the action's happening, and then you have these beautiful back. That's very Adams. You know, he cared, when you look at his drawings, he cared about everything in those drawings. And I see that in yours.
I think in terms of the other inspirations, Booth I would definitely count among a major inspiration. Not with Sam. I mean, from Adams, I really aspire to that sense of the wash of it is so beautiful, and just like it was something to strive toward, just in terms of like craft, like the actual how do you achieve that,
right.
You know, like and
right.
trying to really figure that out. I sort of set that as a standard for me to try and like strive toward, never match and never copy, but just like as an example of what, and also it was just, he elevated the bar of like it just makes cartoon art that much more beautiful and almost like noble, might be too highfalutin of a word, but it's just like cartoons can be that, you know, in like a really proud way. And with Booth, but both him and Booth, even though Booth did a much livelier line, and like his line sort of like, you know, the wall will go into the floor, and there's less sort of like care necessarily with Booth, but in each of them you're 100% convinced that you are seeing an entire world.
Absolutely.
Right, there's life going on beyond the parameters of that image.
Right.
There's a backstory, something's going to happen next, these characters have lives. And I think like those are the cartoonists I admire the most, the ones where you are glimpsing a moment in a wider universe. You know?
And it's funny that those cartoonists have long careers.
Yeah.
Because they're not just turning out a funny drawing.
Right.
They are inhabiting this world.
And they were both kind of odd fits for the New Yorker, in a way, like in their own ways, right?
Yeah.
Booth coming from Missouri, I believe,
right.
and Adams really pushing forward this brand of humor that was much more risky and almost, they're tonally much different than anything that had come before.
I see some Adams-y kind of work in here. There are several.
Maybe like the one where the son has died, and so they don't have to change the sign of the store. Because
that one, yes, that one. Yeah.
So thanks, Ella.
Yeah, today I was looking at it, and I actually imagined what Charles Adams would have done with that. So that's a compliment, by the way, and because it has that feeling to it.
Right. There's an inherent it's just a frugal decision that he's making as a store owner. You know, your son has died, but that means you don't have to then change the sign.
It's great.
Yeah.
It's great. Have you ever been, and I say this out of my own personal experience, there are times, I had a period when I was just so into Saul Steinberg, I just couldn't get enough of Steinberg. We all know Steinberg's stuff.
Yeah.
And it kind of stopped me from working well, because it was so great.
He was looming over.
Looming.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe him and Thurber, of course, with my cartoon god. I look at Thurber and sometimes I think, why am I even bothering? This guy has done everything. It can't be done better than this. It can't be done. But we draw because we love to do this.
Thurber cheated because he sat next to E.B. White.
Oh, well. Yeah, but just for a few years. I mean, he sat next to him, I think, 2 years.
Okay.
And, you know,
we'll
he
take it.
died when he was 64 or something. So
E.B. gave him a little nudge.
E.B. Said to him, when you write, you turn on your mind, you don't turn on a faucet. That's what he said to him. Thurber was just like, But has that ever happened to you where you felt so overwhelmed by, maybe you went to a show or something? Or
Yeah. Well, when I was trying to break in, I got we call it the Big Red Book of cartoons that came out. Bob Mankoff edited it, where it was the 90th anniversary of the magazine, or maybe it was even before that. It was just a comprehensive collection of New Yorker, not comprehensive, but the best hits from every decade. And I would leaf through that probably multiple times a week when I was trying to learn the craft. And it's a fine balance between inspiration and intimidation, right? Like, how am I possibly going to do what Dunn did or what Taylor did, or but then what I say to young artists, actually, in a funny way, it's like I'm often asked, like, how do you break in? Like, how do you forge your career as an artist? How do you find your voice as an artist? And I always say, maybe just because I'm telling them what I did, and you know your own path best, but it's like, shamelessly mimic your inspirations, And when you inevitably fall short, notice what your mistakes were, and that's where your style is. Like your mistakes are your style. And when you start to lean into that a little bit, then there's never any issue of being too close to your inspirations because you're in a different realm.
Yeah, the mistakes are the best.
Yeah.
That's when it gets fun.
I have a little pet theory that maybe that's how we're going to survive AI, is that AI can make ugly mistakes, but we can make beautiful mistakes.
Yeah.
And like maybe it's the artists who keep pushing themselves. One of the things, like in my now mid-career, continuing to make
You've
mistakes.
only been there 15 years.
Continuing to make mistakes can be a little bit of a challenge. Though,
You're
right?
you're beginning your career.
Beginning, okay, great, thank you.
Right.
But yeah, but I think that there's definitely ghosts surrounding my desks, and I just try not to pay attention to them.
I love this question, even though I wrote it.
Can I use that as a caption?
Go ahead. We all cartoonists have go-tos. You sit there, we're by ourselves always, almost always. Maybe there's somebody.
Except for the looming inspirations.
Yes, except for that. And you sit there and maybe your mind's blank and you think, oh, I'll do a psychiatrist's couch or I'll do a desert island. I noticed that your last drawing is a desert island drawing.
Kind of a meta cartoon.
It's interesting. Yeah. And that you would do that. But do you have a least favorite go-to? Like, you're like, I don't want to go there, but you go there anyway.
I feel like I'm always lying a little bit when I draw corporate office cartoons. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's not my realm of expertise. I feel like I'm almost being a little bit judgmental or something when I do those.
And they're not really used as much, so.
That's true, I guess.
I do the same thing, and I do it on purpose just because I know it's like I'm going to challenge our cartoon editor. Say, let's see if you buy this cartoon that you don't buy anymore. You know what I'm saying? So you challenge them. Say, oh, you don't do any more crash test dummy cartoons.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a crash test dummy cartoon.
I guess I leaned a little bit more on tropes as a crutch starting out, because you're trying, and it can be challenging because you're also giving yourself a little bit of a challenge because they've been done so many times. It's actually kind of a good practice to how do you differentiate how do you filter that trope through your perspective, right, and come up with your own.
That's why the desert island thing is interesting because you would think by now,
right,
80 years after the first desert island drawing, that every desert island drawing has been done. But no, Tom Toro, one more desert island drawing. And
it can be oddly rewarding when you hit upon one because you're like, oh, I found a variation, I found a twist.
It's great.
There's one more turn of the screw yet left.
And that actually I do have, and I actually do. The only drawing on here is a light bulb.
Oh, great.
I wanted to ask you about. Do you know? Do you remember Betty Boop? Everybody remember Betty Boop's uncle? I think it was her uncle. He'd get an idea and he'd have a light bulb on his hat, and it would go off. Do you ever have that when you're working, where you're like, you're just going along, and then, bing, 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 you're like, oh my God, and you write it down, and it works.
I mean, that's one of the most rewarding moments in the creative process is when you're like, I got one. It came. It doesn't happen to me as I'm not a doodler. I'm sort of a muller. I'll sit and let the neurons misfire and try to connect. And what you're trying to do as a cartoonist is you're trying to create an unlikely connection between two seemingly unrelated things.
So you're not drawing at that point?
I'm not drawing at that point.
What are you doing? You're sitting in a chair?
I'm just sitting in the chair. I mean, I'm trying to...
What are your hands doing? Are they holding paper?
They're picking up my cat and putting him down, and he gets up again, and I have to put him down again.
I didn't hear you say that someplace else, that you're not a doodler, and I thought, that's interesting, because...
I guess, is it doodling? I'm like, I will have a piece of paper on my lap, on my little table, I have my little lap, what do you call it? It's just like a board or something. It's like a clipboard or something. It's like on my lap with a piece of printer paper, and I'll write The New Yorker at the top, and then I'll start to sort of go over the letters, and I'll kind of make the letters bigger, and it's all just sort of like lines. It's not characters or anything, but I sort of use that to get. So I guess I am technically doodling, but it's not character based.
But are you doodling in words?
Yeah, I'll write words.
Okay.
I'll just write words. I often start from language. I would say I'm more of a language cartoonist than an image cartoonist. And if I can sublimate the idea to just living as an image, then that's really gratifying. But I'll sometimes start with wordplay. I like wordplay.
Which is great, because if you get the words first, you're sold, right?
Yeah.
It's harder to get because we can draw all day, every day, the rest of our lives, and we might not do a cartoon. But if you have the words,
Right.
that it's a seed of an idea.
Yeah. I might have told you this before, but sometimes people ask, like, where do your ideas come from? Do you ever come across them in life? And rarely does that happen. But I was talking with William Hayflay, and he was going through a mall one time. He said there was one time when he overheard a snippet of dialogue that he took verbatim and used as a cartoon caption that sold. And he was overhearing a pair of people talking in a shop, and one of them said, "This is like something I would get for my sister if she could take care of nice things." And he just stole it. But that doesn't happen. You know, that never happens.
But there's this thing out there that, be careful. Oh, you go to a party and somebody says, "Oh, it's a cartoonist. Be careful what you say." We're not really.
No, not really.
We're not doing that.
I feel like I'm more sort of going around just sort of like gathering rubbish. Like this little thing here, I noticed something there,
Yeah.
there's something someone said, there's someone some way behaved, and then that might connect to something completely unrelated that you recall from 2 weeks ago.
Right.
It's really just, there's very little organization involved in it. Because you're
Which is the
trying
key to good cartooning.
Yeah.
Really,
Yeah,
is
yeah,
that putting together unorganized thoughts.
Right,
And
right.
somehow these folks think it works. It shouldn't work, but it does work.
Yeah.
I have 3 quotes of yours. It's close to Halloween, so I will haunt you now with 3 quotes. I interviewed Tom back in 2017. He was just a youngin', just starting at the magazine, 7 years in.
7 years in.
This first one, well, this goes back to what we were talking about, but I'll say it anyway. These are quotes. He said he's always on the lookout for techniques to shamelessly rob from the masters. But we did kind of cover that, is that you learn from.
Yeah, you're never going to get it right. But I mean, I think that like loosening myself out, like I'll learn from Booth, like, oh, the wainscoting doesn't have to be completely horizontal.
Right.
You know, you just stuff like that, and you don't mind, and like maybe a little bit looser. One of my problems when I was first breaking in was I was literally too rigid. Like my stuff with like the lines were a little bit too. I don't know. I was actually gripping the pen too tight. Like I was a little bit too anxious. So like loosening up, not only in craft but in perspective. Like I think that was a huge part of it.
That reminds me of something I read about you. Those 609 drawings, and correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of people do what we call roughs. They submit every week, and it's just a very quick drawing to give the cartoon editor an idea of what you would eventually finish. But correct me if I'm wrong, but those 609 drawings, or maybe a lot of those 600 drawings, you did as sort of finished drawings that you sent into the magazine.
Yes, yeah.
Which
And
is-
even after that, for about a year after
Wow.
that, Bob finally gave me permission to start sending in roughs, because I was still, developing what my finished style would ultimately be. You can kind of tell in the collection where the earlier stuff is. It's not chronologically organized, but you can tell some of my earlier stuff.
Where does that
Some of
Lego?
my
There's a Lego drawing in here. Which is, I think he's a little batty. This guy. I don't know how many. Here, I just opened to it. Isn't that something?
Every stud.
I don't know if you can see this, but there's like a gazillion Legos.
That was the pandemic era, so that was,
Oh,
that
you
was
had
in the
time.
past 5 years. Yeah, that was yeah. That's part of the joke, though, is that it's
Is this early? Or
excruciating.
is this, where is this?
No, I mean that's probably 4 years ago.
Oh,
5 years ago. Yeah.
okay. Yeah. Wow. It's really.
Sometimes I'll sell a joke to them where I'm like, why did they have to choose that one? Now I have to do the finish. Because it's like really detailed. There's one where there's the people on the overpass and the guy saying, why isn't my car horn magically fixing everything? Because he's stuck in traffic. And so then I was like, oh my God, now I have to draw all these vehicles snaking into the distance, But I think some jokes work where the amount of detail contributes to the irony of the joke. Yeah.
We are. I was going to say this up front, but we are graphically opposites.
Yes.
I do as little work as possible, and Tom does an incredible amount of work.
But yeah, I was doing finishes for and then even afterwards, because I think one of the things that my generation had, maybe it was, tell me if it was any difference, but we were breaking into the New Yorker having actually not published a wide body of work elsewhere, because there were fewer places to sort of get a toehold publishing as a gag cartoonist proper. There were less outlets for that, so you weren't coming with like a portfolio necessarily. You were having to show the magazine what you would ultimately deliver. And also, I was just growing as an artist, so it was helpful for me to do that.
Yeah, there were a few more magazines back when I started, but not that many. I was published by, actually, the New Yorker was the first place that paid me. So the places that I was published were like, I don't know what they were.
And they bought your idea that was then drawn by Adams,
Whitney Darrow.
Whitney Darrow.
Yeah, Adams did one a few years later.
Right.
Yeah, that's a little weird thing the New Yorker does. There are still collaborators now. They call them collaborators, I guess. But back then they were a secret. Nobody knew that there were people out there writing and giving those ideas to the artists. George Price, some of you may remember George Price. George Price never had an original idea in his life. Except for his cover. He had one cover of Santa Claus is on a subway. It's a great cover. That was his idea. No caption, though. But it didn't matter because George Price created this beautiful world.
Right.
And it worked. It worked.
And the ideas would all be in a tonally appropriate for the work.
Yeah. Well, there were actually people on staff at the New Yorker who had contracts to write ideas for the cartoonists. And so they would think, I'm going to...
Got to do a price.
Richard McAllister was the king of gag writers, and he has said it was in the Smithsonian. I would sit down and I think, now I'm going to think like Peter Arno. Peter Arno. So, but...
Because one thing Bob said to me when I broke in, talking about like, you know, the process of doing the finishes, and you know, he said to me that he let me in like before I was ready. Because he knew that I needed some encouragement. So I think he did that to some other people in my generation too, because he said this in his biography. I think, you know, how about never? It's never good for you. That he realized at a certain point that he was going to have to actively encourage people to start submitting and getting into the magazine. Otherwise, the stable of cartoonists was not going to refresh. You know, at a certain point. So I benefited from a little great inflation.
Yeah. Another quote from Tom. It's like Chairman Mao, but it's Tom Toro. You wanted to be part of, you wanted to get into New Yorker because, quote, I wanted to be part of that world. What was it about the New Yorker world that was so...
I mean, yeah, it was a way, the cartoons were so attractive to me because it's funny, the New Yorker was not part of my cultural diet growing up. We were not subscribers to it. I was very much a Sunday morning cartoons, Disney movies, Calvin and Hobbes, Far Side kind of kid. Even in college, you know, I really didn't encounter the New Yorker much. And it was only afterward when I was trying to find a path as a freelance artist and focusing on cartooning that I gravitate toward the New Yorker, because just seeing the cartoons like taken that seriously and given that place of honor in this magazine seemed like such a valuable, special place to be a part of, you know. And it really felt like one of the few, like I sort of saw the newspaper, like going into the newspaper cartoonist track was probably a little bit of a dead end. Like the New Yorker felt like it was still a robust artistic ecosystem in a way that in the late aughts, early teens, other pathways for cartoonists seemed to be a little bit riskier in a way. Not that getting to the New Yorker was any sure thing. It's almost funny to say that, but I felt like there was a future in that more so than other places.
The other thing from reading about you is that you said at one point you thought maybe you wanted to be a Disney animator.
Yeah.
Which is sort of totally opposite of what you've ended up doing. Right, a Disney animator, I picture it, a cartoon version of a Disney animator, which is weird, is somebody sitting there and doing something somebody else has told them to do, and it's probably very regimented and copying lines perhaps over and over and over again. I don't know how they do it now, but in the old days of hand, which is what we have is total freedom. We sit down, we have no idea what's going to happen, right?
And the characters don't have to match frame to frame. Yeah.
And while I'm at it, why do so many of your, this is on here, why do so many of your, this is odd for him, in all of the canon of New Yorker cartoons, I don't remember anybody drawing so many people without mouths. Without mouths.
Without mouths.
I went through the whole book. I'm like, oh my God, there's another one. There's another one. There's another one.
I like to make it really evident who the speaking character is in the gag. I feel like it speeds up the joke process.
Yes.
It speeds up the spark.
It works.
It works, and I think it also. Yeah, I like to say that I like my characters to be like human cats. You know, as expressionless as possible. I feel like it allows the audience to imprint their own. It's not telling you how to react, right? There's a dryness to it.
Mm-hmm.
There's an interpretive quality to it, which I enjoy, and also I'm bad at caricature. I'm bad at faces.
The dryness.
Your characters don't have mouths, do they? They do.
I beg your pardon?
Your characters have one eyeball mostly. Your characters are cyclopses.
Well, it depends on which way they're looking. And if they're looking forward, they have two eyes. There was a cyclops in the other week. There actually was a cyclops. But they generally have two eyes.
They generally have two eyes.
Or
Okay.
you have to trust me that there's an eye on the other side.
I was talking to Chris Way, and I was like, do any of your characters ever not wear glasses? Because they're often wearing glasses with no pupils, right? Like
Who's? Chris?
Way, yeah. But yeah, if I find minimal facial expression is useful for the humor.
You also, you spend a lot of time drawing guys with mustaches, which I think is funny as well. I mean, there's a lot. You know, if I put a list like mustaches, no mouths on the back, just like a list, it would be a good percentage of this book. Or beards, or something
Beards,
like that.
yeah, goatees.
Yeah.
Probably because my dad had a mustache growing up.
Okay, all right.
But was otherwise a fairly taciturn person, so you have to read the mustache to get the emotion.
And it's my favorite quote of yours, Tom. I like this. Because this goes really to the heart of how we work. We're not writing like Johnny Carson gags for, you know, a baboon. Oh, but that's nice, I suppose. We wouldn't hear it, but that's nice. But you said trying to say something is the worst way of saying something.
Did I say that?
You said that. And I think you were talking about
Disobeying my own advice in the quote itself.
Political cartoons, which you do. I'm not
Right.
telling you that. You know that. But they don't know that. Some of them don't. But you do a lot of political. You have done political cartoons. But I thought that was great because, if you strive to do something, you're going to somehow miss it probably.
Yeah, I think you have to work in a realm of metaphor almost, or like having, working in a level of symbol and metaphor is often more useful. It feels like it's less preachy. You know, there's nothing worse than a joke that's trying to convince you of something or persuade you.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
And I feel like that's why I have done editorial cartoons. I have done political cartoons. But I like the quieter stuff more. I like the stuff that is more humanistic and sociological and stuff. I feel like that's why the shelf life of editorial cartoons is a little bit limited, whereas the New Yorker can buy something and then print it 20 years later, which we find very frustrating.
Yes.
But there's a sort of timeless quality to them a little bit.
If you go back in the New Yorker, look at old New Yorkers in the 20s and 30s, most of them you still get, but there are a few occasions you'll be like, what is that word? Or what are they talking about? You know, but most of them still carry on to today. Evergreens, that's the official word for them, evergreens. So this is a lot of, almost all of them are evergreens. That's not.
There's one that actually is about evergreens.
Oh, what is
where there's trees. There's a couple trees that have lost their leaves, and they're sort of saying every year I get more annoyed at evergreens. There's one sort of evergreen very smugly standing to the side, full of foliage.
Okay. Oh, good.
You're not going to quote me back to myself more, are you?
I will in the future, because I keep track of these things. Did you want to say anything about any of? We talked about. This one in particular. Is this the one I think it is? This is
the plan. Yeah, that one. Yeah. So with that one, if you want to see the Cole and Sons one in the original, you're going to have to get invited over to the cartoon editor's house and go to her bathroom, because that's hanging in her bathroom. This one has proven to be evergreens. I mean, this one is sort of stuck with me. Yes, the planet got destroyed, but for a beautiful moment in time, we created a lot of value for shareholders. That one, I was not on social media. I didn't have a cell phone in 2012. I had sort of disavowed social media. I was very focused on just trying to be a writer, be a cartoonist without distraction, hermetically sealed in my little creative zone. So I had no idea that it had this sort of life on social media until many years later. But I almost feel like it's not mine anymore. Like it's sort of out there in the ether as it's become a meme, which I guess is a compliment nowadays.
Yes.
But yeah, most recently, a friend sent me a picture. They were visiting Highgate Cemetery in London, and someone had laid a cutout of this cartoon on the grave of Karl Marx, which I found very complimentary. So this feels like a safe space to say that I admire Karl Marx. But yeah, I mean, you never know. Do you feel like has any of your stuff like gone viral
No.
in the same? No. It's a weird.
I've said this once in front of some folks that the most popular cartoon, as we have something called a cartoon bank where they sell our cartoons on mugs or and there's also cartoon stock.
Yep.
Give them a shout out.
Yep. Do it.
And they T-shirts and things like that. And you could go on there and you could see any cartoonist, what their most popular cartoon was.
Right.
Which is, I don't know if that's a good idea, because then you might think, well, I want to do another
more of
one
that.
like that. Yeah, do another popular one. But my most popular cartoon for many years, a long way from this, was some cops bursting into a room that was filled with cows. and one of the cops says, "Nobody moo." That was my most popular cartoon.
There's like one of Bob's really popular, Bob Mankoff, one of his popular cartoons was two apartments next door to each other, and one was apartment 2B, and the other apartment was not 2B.
Yeah,
It's a Hamlet's duplex.
I love that.
So sometimes like the dumbest
The
gag.
simplest. Yeah. Sorry, I'm not helping to save the world like you.
Yeah. So this one was not supposed to exist because I wasn't planning to submit cartoons that week. I was on a writing retreat with a friend, but he got a last-minute gig to shoot a commercial. We were working on a film script of all. We've both been distracted by the siren song of film and TV at various points in our lives. But he went to go film the commercial, and so I had an hour in that afternoon, and it was a Tuesday, and so I said, well, let me just get it off a quick batch. And that was one of the ideas. And then they got back to me the next day saying, we want it for a issue, which means you have to deliver the art for that week's issue. They're going to print it that week. So I had to run back. And so this one I did quicker than any other cartoon I've done.
Oh, wow.
Which is kind of an amazing
I have to look at it
irony.
more closely now.
Yeah.
Oh,
This-
yeah.
This
Just
other
in the
one I wanted to
background,
include just because I'm going to have this as my away message when I die. This one says, auto reply, I am dead and will have limited access to email. That one has proven very popular too. And this other one I think is the pumpkin one.
It is.
I just wanted to include this one because it's the time of year, obviously. But this is a good example of like, you're coming up with a cartoon, you're trying to create an unlikely link between two disparate and seemingly unrelated things. So like carving the jack-o'-lantern, that's always a popular thing to do around
Very much
October.
so.
And then, just trying to make it to a dinner party. But I think the idea that like, I'm a very self-conscious person. I always plan out social interactions when I am going into them, and like I have a script in mind. That's sort of my anxiety. And it's like the idea of carving an expression onto your face, and that's the expression you're stuck with for the whole dinner party. I like that's sort of the origin of this idea, and that you have to make that decision before you go into the party.
And I like, this is a classic Tom Toro drawing. Look at all the things going on in this drawing.
The wallpaper is vines, like they would be for a jack-o'-lantern
Very
couple.
nice. And all that business in the foreground on the right. This is where you and I would differ. I would not have. I would draw.
You would, by the time I was finished, you would have already done next week's batch.
Well, I don't know, but I just.
Were you ever tempted to do wash? Have you done wash on your?
I did two. One was a long time ago. It was a constellation drawing, so I had to do one. It was the sky, and the pencil wouldn't be dark enough, so I did. It was all ink. Oh, I can't remember what it was, but there were appliances in the sky, like a washer dryer in the sky instead of something wonderful. And the other one was a rich man in his room. In the room was completely black because the butler had opened the door, so there's some light coming in, and I think the butler said, "Light bulb, sir," or something. I don't know. I can't remember. But those are the only.
So when you have to have like really deeply shade something,
It's got to be as black as this table.
Yeah.
And I was not comfortable with it because I like a rapidograph. Anybody know what a rapidograph is? Very nice pen and pencil sometimes.
And we trade finishes, and you do your finishes on on the
cheap paper.
simple paper, the cheapest paper. Yeah.
That's from Thurber. That's one of the things I took from him is use the cheapest. I'm not. If I use great paper, I feel so self-conscious. And oh, this is expensive paper. I'm going to do it really well.
I traded art with Bruce Eric Kaplan, BEK, and he does his on just printer paper with a Sharpie.
And they'll last, you know. It'll last.
When I say I traded art with BEK, I reached out to him and I said, I love your stuff. Would you like to trade art? And he said, yeah, I'll send you one. I don't want any of your stuff.
I had the same experience. This is Bruce Eric Kaplan with BEK. Famous really almost more for Seinfeld. He was a Seinfeld writer, and he wrote the famous Seinfeld episode about Elaine being obsessed with drawing and going into the New Yorker. They had this fake building and confronting the editor. And she said, "Why did you buy this drawing?" It was a pig at a complaint thing, whatever window.
Right.
So it was. Bruce knew what he was talking about, and I asked him where the drawing was because they actually showed a drawing on TV, and he said it disappeared. I was hoping that he could get it or something. I don't know, but we do have a small group of cartoonists who also have gone into
TV. Yeah,
TV or
Kanan, Alex Gregory won an Emmy for the studio. I don't think he cartoons anymore, but.
Right.
If this was still the era where the New Yorker submitted gag writing,
yes,
probably some people would probably just submit jokes and not do the drawings, right? Like I would imagine maybe Asher Perlman would be more comfortable just sending in jokes rather than doing the drawings.
Right.
I'm not
That's
sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Here's one story from the old days about writers. When I started, somehow these writers got my address, and I would get these legal-size envelopes packed with ideas and little cards on index cards jammed in there with the tape just barely holding them together. And they wouldn't have a cover letter or anything. They'd just be, here are my ideas to buy, I guess. And I made a habit out of I did not look at them because I did not want to be, the way Tom said it. We bring things in and then it ferments for a while and then goes out. So if I looked at these 3,000 index cards in an envelope, something might actually.
For sure.
So I just take them out, put them in an envelope.
One of our colleagues, Matt Diffie, said that he doesn't take gag idea submissions because he has this nightmare of being on his deathbed and like the nurse coming over and saying, "My favorite cartoon of yours was X," and it was like the one that he didn't come up with himself.
Right. But now in this day and age, collaborators, as I call them, have become a fine thing to do. They're no longer a secret. The magazine publishes their name alongside the cartoonist's name. It's a different world.
We could talk for hours, but if there's does anyone have any questions? Or I'm happy to answer any questions you have out there. Either me or I don't know. I'm not going to speak for you. Are you happy answering questions?
I could have a question.
Mike has a question.
Yeah.
I love the sun dying sign joke.
Oh, thank you.
That's kind of like a two-step joke. So I was wondering what you find more satisfying, like the one that hits you immediately or the one that you have to kind of look back.
Right. I think, because this one you kind of have to follow. It's almost like, Billy in Family Circus. You have to like follow the dotted line to like get they're looking up there and then the guy was putting it up. There's actually kind of a complicated mechanic to that one, which I think that's probably why I didn't include like a background or anything in that one, because you just need to focus on the storytelling within the image itself. I like the faster ones. I like the ones that are communicated a little bit quicker. I think this one works because almost the delay in getting the joke softens the blow of how dark it actually is, But I like the ones that happen a little more instantaneously. You really want it to be fast, like when you're doing a cartoon. A little sort of a belabored interpretation does not usually benefit the joke. I don't know what your impression is.
Well, also, it's one of those things, but the New Yorker doesn't really publish sequential cartoons anymore. When I started, I did a bunch of them. I always found them hard to do, just like captionless ones are hard to do.
Right.
Those are also hard to do. But they just don't really do them anymore. So that might be one of those things
Right.
you do it anyway. Just
Right, right.
To say.
There's only a few multi-panel ones they bought from me. One was there was a wise man on the mountaintop, and the sea levels rise, and he becomes a man on a desert island. And that occurred over 3. So it's like one trope turning into another trope. And I felt like maybe they got that one because it was, and so that was a wordless 3-panel one.
Yeah. And those the Buddhists, whatever they are, I know that's one panel, right?
Yeah.
But it's almost like
You read it.
you are
Yeah,
reading
yeah.
it. It's a good one.
George Booth did those multi-panel cavemen ones
Right.
that almost took up an whole page, probably.
Right, several pages.
Several, yeah.
Another thing they don't do is they don't do page after page. Occasionally, maybe they'll do one, but it's rare. So
Yeah. Roz did one that I loved. I actually show some during some of my presentations. One's called Sid the Caterpillar or something, where it's like a fable where this guy sees his friend transform into a butterfly. He's horrified by it. He goes back to his mom, and his mom says, "Don't. It doesn't concern you." And then it says the moral. Not everyone needs to know about everything all the time.
and that's interesting about her because her whole thing really is, even though I just said they don't print series, she's different because those series are somehow different. They're not.
Right.
They're not.
They are one panel, but
They're one panel, but
yeah.
there's an exception.
Right.
Exception to the rule.
I mean, Roz, all the exceptions are extended to Roz. She's
Right.
a unique talent in
Right.
herself. Yeah.
And we were talking before we came over here. It's been almost 1 year since Tom's first cover came out. He did a Thanksgiving cover last year, which was great.
That's a reminder. I got to get back at it and try and get another one. But
And as long as we're talking about covers, may we say that we have the most prolific New Yorker covers artist daughter here, Sarah Getz, is over there. Look him up if you don't know his work. Arthur Getz, unbelievable work.
prolific. Yeah.
Prolific.
And beautiful.
Just beautiful things. And
May
every
I
time
ask a question since
Yeah.
you mentioned? I'm curious about both of you and your work tactics. Like, do you work daily? Do you work when you feel like it? I'm just curious as what.
Habit is very important to me as an artist. And I think that was sort of ingrained into me when I was doing the whole submission process, trying to break in. You're really, as a cartoonist, you have to be acculturated to just a large amount of output and a few amount of acceptances. And so really it behooves you to just continually produce because you don't have any control over what's taken, and it's to your benefit to be prolific and to come up with a lot of ideas because a very small number of them are going to be taken. And then the ones that aren't taken you can put into maybe future cartoon collections. But I think the habit sort of also pulls you forward. It's almost like a chain link where some days are less productive, some days are more productive, but there's always tomorrow. And that kind of, as an artist, it just helps. It helps you weather the fallow periods, if you just are in the habit of it and you miss it when you're not doing it.
Everything you said, I completely agree. I do. I draw every day, and there's no time frame for it. It's just, by that I mean, I don't say I'm going to draw for 2 hours, I'm going to draw for 5 hours. I just draw. And I think it's the healthiest thing to do, because if you don't do that, they become more precious, the ones you do. And I've experienced cartoonists who we get rejected so much, you guys wouldn't even believe it, how much we are rejected. It's crazy that we even do this thing, but like if we put stacks of our drawings here for the year, the stack of drawing we did would be this high, and the ones that we sold would be like, this high. But we love to draw, so that's okay. It's part of the deal. It's part of the life. But I have run into cartoonists who will take a rejected drawing and they'll bring it to lunch or something, and they'll say, "Why did this get rejected?" And they'll ham and haw over it and try to figure out what was wrong with it. I wouldn't say this to them because I don't like giving advice, but if I did, I would say, forget it. Move forward. Do another one.
Yeah.
Do another one. Keep doing them. Keep doing them. Because that's when you hit upon things.
The former editor, Bob Mankoff, had this little saying where he said, the difference between the amateur and the professional is the amateur loves everything that they create, and the professional is like never satisfied. That there's always going to be, you always have to keep working at it, and you can't be too precious. I think that's the perfect word for it.
Yeah.
Because then you can stall out, and you can get really sort of self-conscious, and that's the worst place to be.
Do you ever have these moments? I have them occasionally, and they're the best. You mentioned it. There are days when like nothing happens. You still drawing, and that's enjoyable. And it's like being in kindergarten again, you know, just drawing. But there are days when things just seem to go right. And it's like this magic dust has come down on us, you know.
I look back in some weeks. I mean, some weeks I'll go for months without selling one, and then then you'll go on a hot streak. You know, like where it's just a fertile period for whatever reason. I've sold like 3 in a batch once, which was really rewarding.
That's
It's like it's just a good week. You know, like you're onto something.
Yeah. But it feels, I feel like it feels different when you know you're in it, when you know, maybe it's like a baseball player when they're hitting well, or not hitting at all. There's that other part.
Right. But very much like baseball, still, if you're a Hall of Fame baseball player, you've missed 7 out of every 10 pitches thrown at you.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's still the same.
Yeah.
You're still
That's right.
weathering a lot of rejection.
Yeah. And we have to recognize that when we're working, as you said, most of these things aren't going to be seen or be sold, but that was never really the point, I'm thinking, right? The point is to...
For me, it was a little bit the point. I kind of wanted to make a little bit of the point. Yeah.
Well, that's where the other markets...
Right.
I never really answered that, but when I started, I think there were about 4 or 5. There was Playboy, Saturday Evening Post, something called Changing Times, which bought a lot of cartoons, missing one. Penthouse, sorry. That was about it.
Yeah.
And they were regular, but nobody was as regular as the New Yorker.
Yeah,
Buys
that's the other reason why they're such an attractive thing to aim toward, is because they buy every week almost. Like so you can trick yourself into thinking you have a career. You know,
right.
When you're doing stuff for them.
Right.
And also sometimes I'll deliberately put stuff in a batch that I know is not suitable for the New Yorker, but just to remind the editor that you're a human being and you're not just a PDF generating machine. Right. Something that you know is inappropriate. Right. Do you ever do that?
What do you mean by inappropriate? I guess
just clearly tonally silly or a little bit risque.
Well, that's my life.
Okay, there you go.
Totally silly. I don't do things serious. That's my version of it.
Semi very serious.
Yeah. The last thing serious I did was a couple have come home just from out there out, and they come home and the Supreme Court is in their living room, and I think one of the people would say, "Oh, what a surprise! The Supreme Court," and people read into that like the Supreme Court was invading their. But it wasn't. It was just a silly drawing of. Wouldn't that be funny to open the door and see these people in robes? And now it actually is sort of.
Now it's actually
sort of relevant now. But I do.
A question for both of you, really. You started under Bob Mankoff. You started under Lee Lorenz, and how have you had to adapt to a new editor, a younger editor? If I'm correct, one who didn't start as a cartoonist.
Correct.
Younger than both of us. Emma's younger.
Yeah.
So have you totally adapted to meet their tastes?
That's an interesting question. I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, you're trying to make 2 people in an office in Manhattan laugh. You know, it's like there's actually very few.
You think about that? No, do you?
Yeah.
Really?
No, I do. Yeah. I mean, maybe yeah. Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I shouldn't have. But I mean, yeah. But when it comes down to the actual decision-making process, I mean, there's no getting around the subjectivity of it. I mean, like it is going to be an editor is going to put their mark on the magazine, and that's sort of their role in a way. There's nothing wrong with that. And Emma definitely does come with a different sensibility. I've always been a little bit of an adaptive creature. When I started cartooning in California and submitting stuff to the New Yorker, and every December I'd have to remind myself to sprinkle snow on the sidewalks of my cartoons because there's people having an experience and they're living in their lived experience. Like I can't just show sunny beaches all the time or whatever. So you are aware that you are trying to get into the magazine and there's people you're trying to sell to. So it's just the business of it. But as far as changing your own outlook or your perspective or adjusting your style, not really. That's what I would say.
I would find that would trouble me all day long if I was thinking of Emma or Bob or Lee. Try not to think about them at all. Try not to think that David Remnick is going to be looking at these. I never think about that. I don't want to think about it. I just want to enjoy what I'm doing, send it out there, move on to the next thing. But having said that, there have been small occasions when our senior editors changed. And the one I remember most is when William Shawn left and Bob Gottlieb was brought in. I got a note from Lee Lorenz that said, "Draw your people younger." And I was shocked because part of the many attractions of being a New Yorker cartoonist is that we aren't told anything. That's the real thing. That's the gift. That's why we do so many drawings and sell a few, is because we have freedom to do whatever.
There's very, sometimes people are surprised by that, but there's very little editorial feedback. When you sell a cartoon, they want that one and you do the finish of it, and it's really, there's not a lot of like, we would take this if. There's none of that. It's just the Roman emperor, thumbs up, thumbs down.
Yeah. And we decide what we're going to draw.
Right.
No one tells us what to draw. No one suggests it. So to get a suggestion, even draw younger, it was like, whoa.
And then, if I'm remembering correctly, in 2017, 2018, we got an email from David Remnick saying, "Diversify your characters, please."
Yeah, I don't
Do you
remember that. But
No, we got, yeah. Well,
Did we?
maybe, yeah. I mean, I think it went out. I received it, but it was I was BCC'd on it, so I assumed it went out to more people. But it was a deliberate thing to like, we're drawing too many white characters in the New Yorker. We need to start to diversify. So there have been, editorial directives like that which you try to follow, but that's rare. That's extremely rare.
Very rare.
I was told there's fact checking that occurs on cartoons. I was told to make my mayflies look more like mayflies. I was told to, I don't know if I can say this, I was told to make a cartoon less vaginal. One time, there was a group of lions who were all gathered around a lion tamer. They were attacking a lion tamer, and the way that I had drawn the manes sort of formed like a V shape. And they got back to me and they said, "Tom, I know this wasn't your intention, but like we've had this come up to us a few times. This looks a little bit too bad." So I had to like change the choreography. And they also told me one time in a baseball cartoon that like, there has not been a left-handed catcher since 1972. Could you please make your catcher right-handed? What? And I said, that's a great thing to know. For the sake of the composition, can I please just leave him left-handed? So they will go into that fine detail,
Which is
sometimes.
kind of strange because, we do talking animals. We have cavemen who have cars and doctorates and all kinds of things. And what's there to fact check? The last time I was fact checked, I did a drawing called Schubert's Unfinished Basement. And I did it, but I imagine, I don't know what Schubert looks like. This is pre-laptops, pre-home computers. And I just drew some guy with like a lot of hair and like a fancy coat, and they sent the drawing back, and they had found like an engraving or something of Schubert, and they put it on the back. And I just kept the drawing I had because who cares? Just telling them it's Schubert.
Yeah, how do you fact check an Ed Koren like creature human fuzzy guy? Like there's where do they? I'd be interested.
They're talking creatures.
It's a talking creature.
Yeah. By the way, speaking of Ed Koren, the wonderful Ed Koren, everyone knows who Ed Koren was, I'm sure. One of your drawings did remind me, the one I talked about it earlier, the fish. Oh, with all the little fish eggs.
Yeah. There's two fish looking into their little fish home, their den, and there's a ton of fish eggs. The way fish spawn that way.
You remember?
And one of them is saying, "That reminds me, we really have to start saving for college." Is that the one you're thinking of?
Yes, that's it. I'll show it, even though it's very small. But you drew all these little fish eggs. Another one, like a Lego thing.
Yeah.
But this reminded me of Ed Koren's great drawing. It's in that at Wit's End book. Of two mice on a stage, and in an auditorium, and they're like 300 mice, and one of them, adult mice on the stage, is saying something like, some bad news, we're gonna get, your mother and I are getting a divorce. Hundreds of mice. So even though you maybe channeled a little Ed, that would be nice.
I have submitted one of them, a bunch of that they have not taken, where there's a couple of rabbit, like one rabbit has just come home from work and the other rabbit is there, and the rabbit's saying, "Oh yeah, Mary's over at a friend's house. Becky has piano, and it goes on for about 20 sentences. But there's no way they're ever going to buy it. I just think it's funny. Like, where are the kids? Oh, our 50 kids are, all in different places.
Did you send it in?
I did, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, send it in again. We do resubs sometimes.
Yeah.
I bookmarked this one because I love this drawing a lot. And I think Adams would have done this. Adams did take ideas. I did an idea. I was asked to give Charles Adams an idea, which was an honor.
That's so cool.
Yeah, that was cool. And I think if he was still alive, I bet they would come to you and say, "Hey, Tom, can we give?" This is a young person walking down the street, and they're on the phone, and the phone has a little tiny umbrella on it.
While they're just letting the rain
Yes,
fall.
yeah, I just love that, and I think that's because Adams always wasn't just macabre. He would just do some sort of.
I'm thinking of there's sort of a Victorian house they drew, and it takes you a little while to notice on the laundry line there's sheets drying, but the sheets have eye holes cut out of them.
Yes.
So it's like a family of ghosts doing their laundry.
Right, and I think he did one with pantaloons or something with 3 legs.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just very quiet, but
Yeah.
I thought that was.
Oh, thank you.
And I love cartoon lineage. So even if you weren't thinking that, I'm going to think that. maybe you.
I'd be on.
Maybe you did that.
I had a question. Do you guys crack yourself up all the time? I mean, as like a career path.
We have crazy people laughing
gotta
alone
be
in
so
our.
fun. From
It's
a
fun to get
perspective.
together with cartoonists.
That's what I can,
It's really
it shows.
There's some that
I'm
are-
in like an engineering background, and it's boring at times, and you go to symposiums and stuff
Yeah,
like
yeah,
this,
yeah.
but to have cartoonists, I would think,
When we get together, it's really enjoyable.
It is fun.
to geek out.
Yeah.
I do love my own company, which I think is like a good tool to have.
Yeah.
So I will actually make myself laugh, like when I come up with an idea, and that's sort of how you know you're on the right track. Yeah.
and then you're like, it's okay, I'm a cartoonist, like if you're
Yeah,
like
yeah.
grocery shopping and you're just cracking up at the
Well, I'm too self-conscious to do that in public, but when I'm alone by myself, I will just laugh.
Yeah.
It's something I've come up with, and that's great.
The personalities too. When we do get together, it's interesting. Some of us are very quiet. Some of us are like they've been working the Catskills since the 50s. Right? Mancloth,
Yeah.
who you mentioned.
Yeah.
Never stopped.
You could have easily been a stand-up.
Easily.
In another life.
Never- yeah, Jerry Lewis was one of his heroes, so that makes sense. But it's an interesting crowd, and the quiet ones sometimes are even the funniest ones. Our friend Jack Ziegler, who didn't talk a lot, but when he said
gentle
something,
giant,
quite a crew, and really, for the most part, 99 point something percent of them, really nice folks. I think. Couple jerks. I'll tell you later. Yeah, but good folks.
Good folks, yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions or?
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you. This was great.
So
Thank
much.
you.
We have
Thank you,
books
Tom.
for
Thank you.
sale.